All right. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good, good. This is the first recording of the John and Joe podcast conversation. What are we going to call it?
The chat rank.
The chat rank. The chat rank. Yeah, exactly. So, honestly, what we've been realizing is there is so much noise and kind of nonsense out there on what is going on in the world of, AI in general, to be clear, but like AI search, what this means for brands, how this all kind of plays into like what people should be really caring about or thinking about. Businesses and business owners, they're every day they're trying to just run their business, whether they're a doctor running your medical practice, a e-commerce like person running your online store, or a coffee shop trying to sell the best coffee in town. Like just people are screaming at you to use AI and the AI is taking over your world, but nobody's really explaining what matters, what is real, like what is not, like like all this crazy kind of talk in the news. And so two people that pretty much live and breathe this every day, we do a lot of educating to our customers about what this means, why it should matter, and like what are the things you can actually do to make AI be helpful and not just, I don't know, be scary. And so, yeah, we're going to do a bunch of these episodes. They'll have general themes, but we're really trying to have a conversation about what are we hearing in the market right now? What are we hearing from customers? What is going to be the most effective way to get this information out to, whoever cares about it, honestly. I don't know if anybody will care, but maybe my mom will listen. Other than that, I don't know, really know, but we'll start with that. So we'll have one audience member at least to start. Joe, you want to give a quick background of yourself and like what we're doing?
Yeah, I'm Joe. I'm the CTO of ChatRank, and I've been working in tech in all various different capacities as an engineering leader, as an engineer across Stripe and Slack and standard robotics. So it's very deep in AI and data in general, and yeah, excited to talk today.
Amazing. And I should have mentioned, I'm John. I'm the CEO of ChatRank. I run most of our sales and go-to-market and kind of everything that's not technical. But the beauty of this is that Joe and I both have like quite technical backgrounds. We've been building products and software for a long time, and so it is a really nice relationship we have. And as much as Joe says he's bad at sales, he's actually excellent at sales. So we'll talk about that in another episode. So today we really want to talk about a core fundamental topic that we feel like we hear so many people like explaining and trying to get out there about like what this means. But yet again, every time we talk to a customer, they're like, what does this actually mean? What does this actually do? Like, how is this different? And so it's the big topic of SEO, search engine optimization, which is kind of traditionally how you were trying to get your page to rank in Google or in traditional search, versus GEO, AEO, LLMEO, AISEO, whatever you want to call it. Everybody's got their different acronym for it. They don't really matter. The idea is like, what is the differences between, call it traditional SEO, how you got your brand to show up more in search when people went online to search for your adjacent topics, versus, what this means now for an AI-centric world where people are discovering information, discovering things in AI. And so that's going to be the focus of today's conversation. And Joe, I'll kick it to you. What is the difference between SEO and
Yeah,
GEO?
yeah, SEO and GEO. So you hear a lot of things back and forth. People say, okay, AEO, GEO, it is SEO. You hear these things saying, oh, GEO versus SEO versus AEO versus, EIEIO, all these different terms. Um, Really, this is just a progression, right? Where we're going from these a tool, like what the tool does, from just summarize, getting you a list of results and getting you a list of content to look at yourself. Then now it's actually going and reading that content and actually giving you the results and giving you the summarization. So it's almost like you hired someone to go and like read Google search for you and then give you back those answers, or go and like do a little bit of research for you. And there's a lot more, of course, a lot of nuance in there, but really it's they're using a lot of the same tools as we had before, but there's a different spin on them. And there's this new player who's this AI tool that's going out and doing the actual research and reading and giving you back a summary for you. So in a lot of ways, it's less about like, are you in that list? It's more so about how are you presented to that AI, and then how is that AI presenting that to the end user. So that's like the way that I see it is a big difference is that now there's this AI tool who's sitting in between, who's now reading the old things and presenting them to the user. A lot of the same technologies, but with this interpreted layer on top.
Super interesting. So let's actually back up even to something you said earlier. So we talked about like traditional search versus AI search. Can you fundamentally explain the differences? Like what is like Google since like 1998, 1999 has been like the way that people get information. Like anybody
Yeah.
would just say I use Google. Now it's like these AI tools, like you mentioned, are kind of like doing it for you. Can you explain like fundamentally like the difference between call it like a search engine like Google and these answer engines like the like how these AI tools work?
Yeah. So I will say, and this is something also that's a little bit misinterpreted, is, Google has been adding AI tools, and they continue to add AI tools. So now even Google search is not really, traditional SEO anymore anyways. But they've, for a long time, they've been having the knowledge graph and all these sorts of tools to add interpretation on top. But when you're thinking about purely like traditional SEO, you're thinking about a list of links. So it's like a directory. There's, if you're old enough to remember, the 90s and the 2000s, and there was a time where there was pure directories where there's like, you could find, it's like your yellow pages, right? And you could find find links, and they're all categorized. And then Google sort of the progression of that, right? Where you're sort of sorting and searching through that information and presenting it in a nicer way where you can query and it's more customized to you. And then the AI tools are now taking that, and they're interpreting it and they're presenting it back to you. So it's much more of a customized experience, and it's effectively like you have someone who's helping you get those results back to you, and tell you. So it's a tech, usually much more text or interactive based interface. And another big thing is people tend to be chatting and going back and forth rather than just sort of single query. But ultimately, behind the scenes, what's happening, right, is these AI tools, they have their base model that they run on. So there's like, Google's Gemini, or Claude, their Anthropic's Claude models. And those tools are deciding what to do. So those tools are going out and they're saying, hey, I want to do a Google search, or I want to look at local maps, or I want to look at something else. So they're sort of deciding what to do. And oftentimes, this is a combination of sort of what the AI is sort of trained to do, but also sort of what the business partnerships are. So who Anthropic has deals with, who ChatGPT has, who OpenAI has deals with, so that they can go out and like use those search providers as their backend to give them the updated information. And an important thing around the models, right, is that there's this expensive sort of training process where the models are updated periodically. And then there's sort of like a snapshot of information. So that gives them an understanding of the world, that gives them an understanding of like how to do things, how to use these tools, but it's frozen in time effectively. And so those tools though need to get updated information. They need to know newer events. They need to know all the companies they might not have been trained on, all the new offerings, all the new products, local information, events, things like that. So they'll go and they'll turn to the similar set of similar using Google, using Bing, these other sorts of tools to actually get those search results and then give them back to the users.
Yeah. So actually, we almost skipped over this, but I actually think now that you mentioned this, it's actually relevant to explain, like, what is SEO or search engine optimization in its core? Like, what is it that companies have done for the last couple of decades to make sure that your link is at the top of the list for Google? So you mentioned, I remember the Alta Vista, Ask Jeeves days pre-Google. Like I remember the Yahoo search days. Like so, those are like relevant to me. But so for a lot of people, they've understood that like, Google just kind of ranks the best information to them when they search a keyword. And so how does that work fundamentally? Now we'll try to do it the 2-minute version of how SEO works, and like why a brand would think about why you should care about search engine optimization. Why should I try to get my page to be higher? Obviously, the higher it is, the more likely the person is to see it. The number one blue link is the first thing people see and click on. I get that, but like, how did a brand do that traditionally? And then after that, I'll have a follow up on like, why is that different now?
Yeah, so there's a couple parts to that. There's how do brands get themselves in there, and then also like what does sort of getting yourself in there mean? What's the actual valuable thing that's sort of gives you results? I'll touch on the first one first because it's a little easier to explain. But with SEO, the whole goal is, right, you want to get your link in there. You want someone to click on your page, you get traffic, maybe that converts. Now with AI, it's doing a lot of that summarization for you, so it actually matters a lot less that your link is in there. It matters a lot less that the user is seeing your URL. It matters more that they're seeing your name or your concept or what you're trying to represent, and they're seeing that with like information that you want as a brand. So if it's good reviews or things like that, sort of resonates with your brand image. So that's one big thing. Is it's not anymore like is my link in there? It's is my name in there and am I being represented well? And then on the like how do you get your links in there? Because there's sort of like I said, there's the AI part where it's reading and interpreting the results, but it's ultimately going back and it's still using a lot of the same search technologies. There are definitely some tweaks there and some changes, and that's probably some of what you're alluding to. Is there's different games you could play around like how you get your how you get your articles and your content in that search result list. But ultimately, they're going and they're sort of reading URLs and then you reading this like associated content and then interpreting that and giving that back to a user. So a lot of the a lot of the changes have come, and there's a lot of different speculation about why. My strong theory is there's a lot of push from these AI tools to have more recent information, since they have fundamentally they're trained on these older models, so they sort of bias already towards knowing older things, knowing sort of set in stone things from somewhere between 6 months ago to in some cases multiple years ago information. And so they're looking for sort of new information that kind of challenges their views and helps them expand their worldview. And so that's recent articles are extremely important. Information that's novel, that's sort of not in the training data set. So if you have facts or information that that's different than what AI tools know, or different than sort of what you can get by just searching around the internet and finding, those sorts of insights are extremely valuable to these AI tools because they have their set of knowledge that they know and they want to bring in additional information. It's not super useful to them to just take the same information they already know and throw it in there. And that differs a lot from the older search, right? From traditional sort of SEO, where a lot of it was around sort of this relationship building between websites, where it's like, okay, this website links to that one. I mean, this is the traditional like PageRank, which was the first. It's not necessarily like 100% the entirety of how Google works anymore, but that was the original paper on how the first version of Google works, which was sort of like if you just give every website in the world, 1 cent, and then they vote for who they link to with their fractions of pennies, and then you do that a bunch of times. At the end, you'll have some Wikipedia and such with huge sums of money, and then some random t-shirt store in some random town in the US has a much less ingoing links, so they have less authority. So those are like the page authorities and those scores that people care about. And then there's layers and layers on top of that. I mean, Google's become an incredibly sophisticated tool, so it's a whole series of talks. But more or less, it's around the links and the sort of traditional authority of like why this and keywords and making sure that your website is sort of associated with the queries that people are issuing.
Yeah, no, I think that was great. I really like that because this is something where people kind of understand sort of like what it means, but they actually like there is nuance to this. There's so much, like you mentioned, Google has been spending decades making this, in their words, like fair, like making this more relevant so that they're getting the most people to use their tool so they can get the best information. And so they're really intentional about what they're surfacing first. And so there's this idea of authority that I'll kind of start with. I'm interested to hear if you have like opinions on this, but like the idea of authority is like, will Google recommend you if they feel like you're the best person to answer this question? You're the best person to like kind of opine on this topic. And so this idea of authority is done differently, obviously in the old traditional search versus the new AI search. We'll get to that in a second. But the idea was always what authority meant was, do other people that have authority like you? So I love your idea of like everybody starts with a penny and then they start giving away their money with like through like the idea of links. It's like if you are a company and the Wall Street Journal says links to your website via a backlink, if you've heard that term, like they would link to your website and say, hey, like John's Smoothie Shop is the best smoothie shop in the country. Like that's going to be so much more weight than if like some random person with like a tiny website that has no authority like links to your website and says like, hey, John's Smoothie Shop is the best. Like having high authority gives you like authority from other people. It's almost like this weird mesh network of like authority that's given out and kind of taken by different like websites. So that is always how it's worked. So SEO has always been about how can I get backlinks, meaning like how can I get other good websites to link to my site and like get that to feel natural and authentic. Because it is like if you give the Wall Street Journal to talk about you because you really are the best smoothie shop, and like that's going to give all the authority signals in the world to Google to recommend your smoothie shop. And so that idea of authority has been like really impactful for many years because it meant that people wanted to go out and get these different backlinks from different relevant websites, and that means they're like it's also led to some black hat tactics around these link farms and people trying to just give away backlinks to like kind of like make that seem more authoritative. It's actually been quite annoying, and Google's been pretty good about cracking down on this recently. They've really like understood more like fully like what they should be recommending because again, this is what Google cares about, to make sure that their customers still come to them and use them for their search. So knowing that like this like by the way, for content as well, if you're writing content, they need to be seen as authoritative, which you mentioned. Like, do you have unique insights? Do you have things that like really matter? So now going forward, when it comes to like the world of authority in AI search, or how like these AI tools you mentioned, they're like kind of scanning the traditional things like maps, like Google search results, and trying to like assess the information for you and recommend an answer. Like the
Yeah.
idea of authority still very much matters. I'd love for you to comment on like what that means differently now in this new world of AI, because frankly, like the link doesn't matter as much anymore, but the ability for you to explain why you are still the best and have other people validate that you are the best at this thing matters more than ever. And so like talk a little bit
Yeah.
about like that from the old traditional search to like the new version of AI search when it comes to this idea of authority.
Yeah. I mean, I think you covered the traditional authority pretty well. And I also just the Google is not like I think in this conversation we talk about Google, like Google search traditional, like Google's been evolving and changing, like you said, keeping on top of a lot of these trends over the years. And they are now also a major player in the space of AI search. And so they're doing, they're sort of on both sides, right? Where they're sometimes a search provider just for links, and they're also very often playing that role of the AI provider in that entire end user experience. There's also this, I'll add another concept in here, which is, the AEO, GEO, all the different terms that people are using. And I think people spend a lot of time splitting hairs around those. In my mind, it's actually a lot more important to think about the different providers, the different tools, and the different end user experiences that people are using, because it really does make a difference in terms of how the search results and how the ultimate results end up in the user's hands. And so, right, there's players like Google who have been in this game for a very, very long time and have very good trust signals that they've built up for quite a while. And you can disagree with them or whatever, but they've built up a huge amount of understanding of sort of authority signals and what people like to click on. They also have huge like Google Chrome and all these signals for engagement, Android and all these different devices. So they have a tremendous amount of data about like what works for users and what drives engagement, what people click on and churn from very quickly. So they have a lot going into beyond that sort of initial sort of graph of sort of links. And then you have the newer players, right, who are sort of bootstrapping this whole worldview from scratch. And yeah, those ones, it's you kind of have to look at each one sort of and learn. And this is a lot of why what we do and what's important in this space is like to learn the nuances of them, because there's everything from heuristics where like engineers are writing, okay, if it's wiki, then it's high, and if it's Reddit, then it's high, and if it's this other domain, then it's low. To sort of more built into the models and the way that they interpret data. There's a lot of different layers and dimensions there. I'll also say that there's trust sort of manifests in different places as well in these AI tools. There's the trust during training, and what a lot of these models will do is they'll do things like they'll um, weigh data from certain providers higher than others. So during the training phase, you'll have information from trusted, reputable sources being weighed significantly higher in the feedback as they're training the algorithms. There's the trust in that search layer, which again, a lot of folks are using Google or using other similar tools that have been around for a while. With some tweaks, that we have seen that things like the links are weighted a lot. The linking scores are weighted a lot less than recency and like sort of topical relevance. Then there's also like the worldviews, yeah, that the models have, and then also sort of like how they interpret that data and how they trust that data when it's actually executed and run. Because ultimately they'll get a bunch of information from the search, and then they'll present it to the user, but they have their own sort of opinions and interpretations on top. And so there has been a lot of value in. There's a lot of value seen in sort of this novelty of data, or bringing sort of your own. If you could produce data that you can stand behind and you have a reason to stand behind, if you're Nike and you're releasing studies around big screen TVs or something, like that's a totally unrelated thing, and so it sort of will not resonate typically as well in the LLMs. And but if they're talking about shoe fit and athletes and things like that, and they can produce facts that are relevant to them, then that typically will be very well listened to and very valuable to the LLM. So it's like thinking what sort of insights and what sorts of data do you have as a brand that aligns with what you care about. Also, it's less valuable for them to talk about TVs. So you want to find the things that are relevant to you and that really resonate with your brand and your search intents that you're trying to go after. And then, ultimately all that's put into the AI, and it needs to figure out sort of what to trust and what to listen to. So There's even, we see a lot of times where the specific phrasing, if the LMs, if the AI tool is like pulling out that phrase from your page, and you're able to give that structural trust in it and say like, according to, or actually give statements of why that data is trustworthy, not just sort of say it, then those sorts of things can also very, very much help in making your data trusted by the AI tools as they're reading them.
Yeah. Something I want to call out to what you just said that I think is super relevant to pretty much everybody we talk to, because this is a lot of when we said there's a lot of nonsense going around there, people just like shouting, this is how it all works. Like, one major miss is that like people will see that like say OpenAI tunes their model, and all of a sudden like Reddit gets like recommended more, like it's like more like used as a citation. Then it's like everybody screaming, Reddit's 50% of citations. You got to use Reddit. It's like, yes, they did tune their model. They then made more like Reddit be more useful for citations in these certain areas. But then a week later, they might just tune the model back because they just want to try something. And they turn it back, and now like it's actually like now it's not as relevant
Yeah.
anymore. But
Yeah.
you spent the last week screaming at everybody that you have to care about this thing because it's the new greatest thing. It's like, no, you have to just monitor and understand how these AI models are like kind of using information. Like you mentioned, they're newer at this. They're trying to like bootstrap their way to like figuring out what
Yeah.
matters, what doesn't. Because ultimately what they're trying to do is keep engagement, keep using their tools because they want you to like feel that you're getting the best information, the best answers from their tool, not somebody else's. I mean, it's very much like a business. These companies are trying to make money. And so when you understand that and realize that when they're changing how their models react or how they give information or what they're using, a lot of it is not just like monumental changes. It's literally some engineer being like, I'm going to change this tuning, I'm going to change this weighting, and like that how we retrieve information or how we kind of recommend like what to use. And then they're like, oh, that was bad. I'll revert it back, or I'll like change it or do it again. Like it's going to be coming like that all the time. And so this
Mhm.
is something where we always like every time I see this on LinkedIn, like LinkedIn or anywhere where people just all caps, this is like what you need to care about. This is what's happening. This is like the new thing. It's like, take a breath. It's not really like that's not the future. That's not everything. Like you just need to be
Yeah.
understanding of how these models change and react. And of course, again, this is what we do as a business. This is how we help our companies we work with is figuring those things out. Because you do want to react and adapt to them, but you also have to be ready to adapt back anywhere else. And so you mentioned this as well earlier about business partnerships. Can you just touch on that? Because it's something where I think people just do not
Yeah.
understand that like if you want to get your stuff cited, you want to get your information out there in the LLMs, just knowing that like Anthropic has a good relationship with Meta or a bad relationship with Meta will matter. Like that matters if like Instagram's going to get cited or not in Claude models. Like that just is the reality of this. And so
Yeah.
users, like, as a user, as a company owner, as a business, you should know that yes, you think that like all things are created equal, but frankly, like these larger data providers are like, kind of making these AI companies pay to use their information in their answers. And so you can just talk a little bit more about like the business idea behind these
Yeah.
different things, because I think like, well, one, this could change at any moment because these companies could just change their business relationships. So maybe like not set in stone, but like how this all works and why that matters, because this is something I think people just do not get. They just assume all information is everywhere, but it's not. And like, there's been some pretty big legal cases around this, and the New York Times famously sued OpenAI from like day one, saying you can't use our stuff. Like, there's just like been a lot of this information kind of sharing and kind of trading.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think, and a big famous one of course, Microsoft and OpenAI's relationship, right, where they effectively bought OpenAI. I mean, controlled a lot of their profits and things, and uh, we're the only exclusive provider of the search backend for OpenAI tools. ChatGPT, of course, uh, and then slowly but surely, Google's been showing up. Other tools have been showing up. Access Search, other tools have started to show up in there. In their backend, and so it's like that one's the most probably dramatic and sort of flame war type one. But yeah, I mean, all these things have these are all real companies who care about and are scared of what's happening in the future and care about their moats and their data and their relationships. And ultimately, there's people who are driving these relationships. So it's there's they can change quickly, and they're not some neutral sort of absolute purely optimized system. I mean, we've seen SERP, was it SERP API? I think it was sued by Google for, and it is wild also to see how much there's sort of nefarious backdoor things happening. But these companies are so big that eventually gets found out and comes out in the open. And of course, like you're saying, all the sort of pre-training data around, well, lots of people suing. less people suing each other for sort of stealing data. Um, yeah, so it's really complicated because obviously these companies want access to everything, but then they have to figure out how they're going to get it. Are they going to sort of cheat and get it? Are they going to, and how long is that going to last? Are they going to get sued for it? Are they going to find actual partnerships with folks and sort of build proper relationships with them? And then over time, as more and more companies, so Cloudflare are sort of locking down by default a lot of their bot scraper behaviors and trying to kind of extract a toll almost in some ways there. Um, I think we'll see how it goes, but it's gonna. There's just like there's a lot of things happening in the background that are not. It's not like okay, there's all this data available. Find the best thing. There's always engineers making different changes as well as like money moving and sort of corporate alliances shifting and things that have nothing to do with sort of data quality changing, drastically changing the way these sorts of tools perform. So yeah, I mean, Reddit could sue someone, tomorrow, and we could see Reddit drop off the face of the earth from an AI perspective. But yeah, it's a
No, that's
complicated.
great. We're gonna have a future episode about this, like the idea of like what data matters, what you should care about, how you
Yeah,
should focus, like for your brand, like where if you're a coffee shop, you should be very differently. There should be a different strategy for you than there should be if you're a B2B software company. Like that is just a very different way to optimize for AI search and for all these things. And so we'll have future episodes about all the different topics. I think just like to scratch the surface, I think you're right. Just when you're thinking about what works for you, like don't assume what works today is going to work tomorrow, but stay on top of it. Understand like the core fundamentals of what matters, and that's kind of what we talked about earlier. So, um, Joe, if you don't mind like summarizing like just a
yeah.
little bit of this, and then like yeah, go ahead.
I'll add to it too. I think another thing we've seen, and this is sort of true of Google, but definitely true in the AI tools, is that the different search intents can behave very differently. Uh, I mean, OpenAI, like ChatGPT and Cloud and a lot of these tools, there's even cases where they just don't search at all if they know the information. There's cases where we'll use bizarre data providers. What was the one you found the other day of using one of the mapping providers from MapQuest,
Yeah,
right?
it was like
MapQuest.
OpenAI just wasn't, it was using MapQuest, and so like
Yeah, yeah,
every like local business has always been told like get your Google Map pack like together, get your Google Business Profile together, like make sure that's like super tight and good. That's how you win.
yeah,
Well, if OpenAI is just not using Google Maps because they're not allowed to, or because they have some weird relationship, or they feel like they're going to use MapQuest instead, that's a big deal. You
yeah,
should know about that. Like that's something you need to like
yeah,
optimize for and care about. So this is something where you have to like, not everybody has equal access to data, and so some of these companies can be pretty petty. They want to be paid for it and all these things. So just knowing that and understanding that is like super important to realize there's not one size fits all for every
yeah.
single like use case or model.
Yeah, and that's the point. Is it's like it's not there's not just one read a GEO book and understand sort of the pattern to apply to every single company or every single tool that you have. There's a lot of value, especially when there's so much change like this, and just looking at the actual data and using one of these tracking tools or understanding sort of what's actually happening, or even just trying it yourself. Like you can run ChatGPT 20 times and just get an anecdotal sense of like what kind of things they're referencing and how they work, because that it does differ per customer. It does differ per search intent, and it's really important to like understand what it's actually doing and how it's representing these things.
Yeah, that's really helpful. It's also good to remember like yes, the AI tools are very sophisticated and will, when you do search something in like an OpenAI or like ChatGPT, it is going to go out and probably do a live search to try to get you the best answer, but not always. Like sometimes it just is baked into the training data. So if you ever
Yeah,
ask like ChatGPT like who is the like mascot of Disney, it's going to say Mickey Mouse. It's not going to like think. It's not going to do a live web crawl to figure out who the mascot of Disney
yeah, yeah,
is. It's going to say Mickey Mouse. Like so it knows these certain things, and so it has a good baseline of knowledge. But as you're mentioning, like it is just going out and trying to get you the best answer. So if you ask for, the best coffee shop or like the best software tool that does X, it's definitely going to like think, okay, well, I know I have some information on this topic, but there's definitely a chance like a new coffee shop opened in the last week, or like, a new software vendor
hmm
opened up to compete in the last year or so. Like I should probably do a live crawl to make sure that I'm actually giving the best information possible. So it does more and more of that, although frankly that costs more compute to the AI companies. So they also are trying to figure out ways to like produce that. It's a game, and so they're just understanding the nuances of this is kind of quite important. And so Joe, like I mean, like I said, we're gonna have future episodes about a bunch of these things, including the next episode, which is gonna be all about like why does this matter for my brand? Why does SEO versus call it GEO, AEO like matter for my brand? Like what are the things I need to care about in those areas? But for now, what's like kind of like to summarize a little bit, like what are the like the major takeaways from like GEO versus SEO, like what is the major takeaway for like the average person to understand?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to understand is that GEO is now an AI tool going and doing what you used to do. So it's going and it's reading search results, it's going and it's thinking, and then it's giving you back an answer. So now you need to not just think about the search results, you need to think about how this AI is interpreting those search results and how it's presenting that back to the user. And so that interpretation is now the important thing and not that list, not those blue links.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love that. I'll add on to that. Like the most important thing that I try to remind our customers about all the time is SEO is not dead, it's evolving. And so as you are thinking about what can I be doing as a brand to make sure that I'm optimized, it's the same things you've always kind of done, just maybe like a little bit tweaked or tuned for how AI likes to retrieve information, or like how like you just described. And so it's not like fundamentally changing your website or your business or your brand. It's just being the authoritative topic on something, making sure that you have topical relevance with everything you're saying and doing, making sure you have like the data and information, the customer stories to back it up. Like that has always mattered. Now optimizing for AI search, of course, we'll talk about in the next episode what that means, but that is the major thing is that understanding that being the right and relevant person and topic or brand for this industry, for this kind of search intent is what really matters. And so that is what you should be going after. Amazing.
Right.
So this has been really fun. I really like the kind of the direction this went. I mean, this is pretty free flowing. I love that. So anyway, we're going to do this again a lot more. I hope people find this interesting. If you do, great. If you don't, let us know why. But yeah, I'm super excited. And Joe, we'll do this again soon.
All right.
All
See
right.
you.
Thanks.